You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. We do have some breaking news to dig into right out of the gate. Maurene Comey, the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, has just been fired by the Justice Department. Now, this was an individual who was part of the prosecution teams for Jeffrey Epstein, for Ghislaine Maxwell, and for Sean Diddy Combs. Now, her being fired is a pretty interesting turn of events, given that, again, the guy in charge of ethics advisement for the DOJ was just canned earlier this week. There have been a lot of speculations thrown out about what this might have to do with perhaps the Epstein files, what this has to do with maybe Dan Bongino over on the FBI side of things, Kash Patel as well. What we do know right now, again, is that Maurene Comey, daughter of James Comey, and hopefully I don't have to tell you who James Comey is, has been fired by the Department of Justice. Now, many media outlets have reached out to the Department of Justice for any kind of a comment whatsoever. But it appears, at least at the moment, that no one from the Justice Department is saying anything whatsoever. So, at least as far as we can tell, right now there's a lot of attention on whether or not Ghislaine Maxwell is going to testify in front of Congress regarding the Epstein situation. Of course, we aired footage yesterday regarding some of late updates on what or may be in any files. Of course, we'll keep you up to date on that. But again, at this point in time, although the DOJ has not issued any kind of a specific statement on the matter as to why this individual was fired, Maurene Comey, daughter of James Comey, has been fired by the DOJ. Again, she was on the prosecution teams for Sean Diddy Combs, for Jeffrey Epstein, and for Ghislaine Maxwell. So I'm sure more details will follow. This brings us over to the Senate and the House, who essentially have taken the last week to ham up any kind of political theater that they can. Now, yesterday we played for you the horrible, brutal, ear-stabbing pain that was Representative Hank Johnson of Georgia playing his version of Wonderwall. And it was extremely awful, and everyone made fun of it, but the Democrats decided, in true Democrat fashion, they had to one-up this. So what was on the docket? Well, yesterday evening, keeping me up while we wrote the top news in 10, the Senate passed with a 51-50 vote, $9 billion in DOGE cut in this recision package. $9 billion in DOGE cuts from the Department of Government Efficiency suggestions. These included things like cuts to PBS and NPR. Now, as a quick aside, there were concessions that were made to people like Susan Collins of Maine by, originally it was a $9.4 billion rescission package that was passed by the House and sent over to the Senate. Senate leadership cut $400 million in world AIDS relief out of that rescission package to kind of soothe the soul of Susan Collins so she would vote for it. And then she and Lisa Murkowski and Mitch McConnell on the Republican side joined the Democrats to vote against it anyway. And then Vice President J.D. Vance drove to the Capitol to, I believe, break his sixth tie so far as vice president. So that's now headed back over to the House where it's going to pass. Those DOGE cuts that everyone's been waiting for. Again, not a massive tens of billions of dollars type of thing, but that's not what DOGE had found to bring before the American people for cuts. It looks like Speaker Mike Johnson is going to be able to get that through before the deadline on Friday. Senator Chris Coons, however, has decided that now is the time to do what all Democrats must do when all else has failed. He's going to break out the Bible and quote scripture because there's a lot of aid that was cut to all of these poor people. NPR, PBS, LGBTQ2IA. Oh, it's horrible. And so Chris Coons, he gets up in front of the country and he starts a preaching.
Unanimous consent, the following senators be permitted to speak prior to votes. Myself for up to 10 minutes, Senator Cantwell for up to 10 minutes, Senator Murray for 5 minutes, and Senator Schumer for 5 minutes.
Okay, so he's going to establish the Robert Rules of Order. All right, we're going to waste a lot of time. We're all going to get up here and we're going to talk. So you're going to listen, dang it. And now that that's over, he's ready to get very emotional. I'm so excited. Get the Hallmark cards.
Objection.
Jesus wept.
Jesus wept. Ah, yes, John chapter 11 and verse 35. Jesus wept. Now, what is he going to relate Jesus wept to? Because it's a very, very specific passage in Scripture, as well as the shortest verse in the Bible, which impresses me still that Chris Coons was able to memorize a Bible verse, much less one so long as Jesus wept.
Jesus wept.
In case you forgot it the first time he said it.
Most of us who grew up in Bible-believing households know this is the shortest verse in all of Scripture.
Thank you, Professor.
And in some ways, the most powerful.
The most powerful.
One that haunts me. Jesus wept in John the 11th chapter, 35th verse, because he had come too late, seemingly, to save the life of Lazarus.
That's not why he wept.
He wept because someone he knew and loved had died, and it had caused such harm and loss to his family.
That is the reason that he cried. Correct. Now, how are you going to tie this into the DOGE cuts recision package?
Today, we are doing something on this floor of this Senate. My Republican colleagues are doing something on the floor of this Senate that I believe would make Jesus weep.
They're giving people leprosy? I thought we were cutting NPR so that people wouldn't have to get that anymore. Amazing. I didn't realize there was a leprosy contingent in this particular passage of Scripture. That's pretty exciting stuff. I'm personally exceptionally amazed. So aside from those particular things, what in the world is Chris Coons talking about that's got Republicans under such a very important Jesus wept spiritual lecture? The Republicans are cutting federal aid for LGBTQ plus 2IA advertisement projects that falsify data. And by the way, you should be well aware that the federal government has now issued subpoenas for doctors who have performed transgender surgeries and given certain transgender medications to minors, because the more we look at this stuff, the more harmful we discover that it is for children. Now, not surprising for some of us who, actually studied this quite extensively and understand that tampering with children's hormones and lopping off body parts is not exactly the best of moves. But when the Democrats can't argue the science, they get out the Bible and they flip to a random page and they go, this is bad. How could you do it? Of course, Hakeem Jeffries, the House Minority Leader, or the House Minority Speaker, as some might call him, he decided to get out and do the same thing just a couple of days ago, only this with a latter part of the book of Matthew.
For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat.
I love the Democrat. It's in the book. It's in the book. There's a lot of things in your party that they despise that are also in that book there, buddy.
I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. A stranger, and you invited me in.
Yeah, that's not what the you're a stranger and you invited me in thing. That's not you were an illegal immigrant and you violated the country's laws instead of going through the legal immigration policies and practices. And now you're rectifying decades of abuse of an immigration system. That's not what that means. Also, by the way, that particular passage in Matthew, as we've gone over extensively, in a very Bible-thumping fashion, all the way back to the Koine, Christ is not talking about using the government as a lever to generate altruism by taking money from someone and giving it to someone else. That's not what the Bible is talking about. Personal sacrifice, personal compassion, and altruism from your own decision to do so, that's compassion. So missing the mark as they always do. Because of what? What are they so upset about? LGBTQ aid cuts and then also NPR and PBS, their very own state-funded outlets of great import, are no longer going to be funded by your taxpayer dollars for like 2 years. Oh, no. Radio crew, we're going to talk about this on the live stream. We'll see you guys after the commercial break. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, what on earth are they doing after yelling about NPR and PBS for like several months, which is what they've done? At this point, every single morning they've woken up and they've said, it's the end of times. Bernie Sanders took to social media. If they don't even have my state-funded media, who is going to tell me I am such a wonderful man walking around with AOC all over the country in my pudding? They're upset. They're terrified. And I tell you what, they're tired of being told. They're leftist outlets. They're sick of it. No one more sick of it than the NPR CEO on CNN this morning, and she's ready to wag a finger at you.
As far as the accusations that we're biased, I would stand up and say, please show me a story that concerns you, because we want to know and we want to bring that conversation back to our newsroom.
Now, you might have, given the attitude of Wolf Blitzer and Jake Tapper when they have on a guest from the right side of the aisle, they immediately start listing things. If you are on a TV interview and you say, I dare someone to list something, you better be ready when people start listing things. In this case, it was Senator from Louisiana, Kennedy, whose great truisms should go down in some of the greatest of congressional history. A phenomenal individual, and he got on the floor of the Senate. And it's a very long video, so we're not going to play all of it here in this short commercial break for the live stream side of things. But I will go through some of the headlines that he pointed out. NPR reported that country music and birds are racist in 2 separate articles. NPR said that it would be healthier if Americans stopped eating beef and they had a responsibility to the environment to do so. Promoted the Russiagate conspiracy that is getting worse for the Democrats by the day as more information is unearthed. Again, NPR claimed that President Biden's debate performance didn't change the election at all, and that actually Biden was mentally fine just days before he dropped out of the election. NPR reported there's no evidence that biological men have an unfair advantage over biological women in sports. They have written about 13 variations of that article with no scientific data whatsoever to support it. They've also called America's interstates racist. They have suggested consistently that rural Americans are Christian nationalists. Of course, heaping praise on Biden's Assistant Secretary of Health, Rachel Levine, one of the classic dudes in skirts. I have a bit more personal of a story with NPR because they are one of the news organizations that I have fact-checked more than almost any agency in media. So from 2022, reaching back a little bit here, Mallory Newell over at NPR, They cast a poll before a bunch of Americans and tried to suggest that parents don't care about culture war stuff. They don't care about the transing of the kids. They don't care about segregationist policies and discriminatory policies in public schools. And they put this little poll together. And there was a bit of a problem. Essentially, they asked people in the polls one kind of question, and then they got in front of the public and they said something totally different. So they asked questions. So first of all, they would get out in front of people and say, hey, do you think that parents should have a say in what goes in your kid's library? And then Americans, suggested that they approved of that. And NPR instead got in front of the public and said, well, listen here, you troglodytes. Parents say that they think Republicans should keep their stinky mitts off of the libraries. That was that entire polling article. And I was criticized by individuals associated with NPR for misrepresenting that particular study, which lasted about 36 hours before they deleted all of those tweets because they were wrong, they were called out for it, and there might have been impending lawsuits. That's NPR. Now, there's a totally different perspective of this over from those like Dana Bash on CNN, who's usually busy licking her own feet.
And he wrote, it's very important that all Republicans adhere to my rescissions bill and in particular defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is worse than, I'm not even going to read that.
I'm not even going to dignify such insults of the hallowed halls of journalism. Oh, aren't you lucky that you have someone like Dana Bash? We'll play the rest of this clip here in a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So Dana Bash over on CNN got up in front of the country, made the case that NPR is so holy. But of course, first we have to say Donald Trump is a big, mean man who writes big, mean things on social media. Oh, the horror.
And he wrote, it's very important that all Republicans adhere to my rescissions bill and in particular defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is worse than, I'm not even going to read that. Any Republican that votes to allow this monstrosity to continue broadcasting will not have my endorsement.
I I think one of the most interesting groups of people to watch in this are the rural Republicans in the Senate and the House.
The rural Republicans, yes. Here's where we're going to get the big, impressive 8-degree chess, red yarn on the corkboard conspiracy.
And on all of these issues, because so many of them are affecting rural communities, and public schools are the center of small towns in America.
They are not.
And my understanding from Democrats who cover rural areas is they don't think that they can exactly win rural America, but
because they hate rural America.
They say they're being heard in a way that they have never been before, and maybe they can lose less badly. And so I just think tariffs, USAID, and SNAP, which the agriculture community funds or sells their product to, these are all putting stress on rural communities.
And rural communities rely on public broadcasting still.
That too.
And public education.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, rural communities, God forbid, if we didn't have, the PBS station in Indiana, my God, people would be walking outside into tornadoes and dying in tsunamis in the middle of the country, which, by the way, that does remind me, there is an impending tsunami alert on the Aleutian Island corridor. So if you have a little bit of time, do say a prayer for those who are about to be affected by another tragedy on that level. Now, it's not something that's out of broadcasting range for Americans. It's not. And the hyper fear-mongering is going to come back to bite them in a couple of ways. This is, in particular, over on the committee side of things. Because right now in the country, you essentially have a good and a bad, and then like some really awkward stuff that's going on. And we'll get the awkward out of the way first. The Democrats are consistently trying to claim that if you do not fund their public media, if you do not give them money, essentially you're Hitler. Here's former Republican and complete goober David French trying to make this case.
That as well. So, David, can you put into perspective how much the NPR case is escalating a nationwide culture attack on free speech?
Ooh.
Yeah, I've not seen anything like this in my adult lifetime. I think we're looking at a comprehensive attack on free speech that is maybe most reminiscent of the Red Scare. And, the one thing that is so particularly pernicious about it is that Donald Trump is very shrewd, politically shrewd in his attack. He's taking on a lot of institutions that a lot of Americans don't like. So, for example,
I love that so much. The simultaneous claim that Donald Trump is both Adolf Hitler, and he's shrewd and he's conniving and he's intelligent and every single move is scalpel precise, but he's also a big dumb idiot who's going to get us all killed in wars and climate change and everything else. By all means, pick one if you can, but you're busy being particularly pernicious in photosynthesis and other large words that I'm looking very impressive over.
Elite universities. You're not exactly going to get millions of Americans in the streets for elite universities.
Why?
Or white shoe law firms. People are going to be in the streets for white shoe law firms.
Why?
Or for big media outlets where he sued them for defamation.
Why? Why wouldn't they be out in the streets for big media? Why not? I thought that you guys were very popular and important.
Et cetera, or retaliated against them. So he's choosing many of these politically unpopular targets, but that's the classic move of the censors. If you go back to the Red Scare, this was a frontal.
I'm not going to listen to his nonsensical bending of history just because he wants to complain on MSNBC. Going after what people don't like. My God, the horror. Let me introduce you to politics. And this does get us into a couple of really awkward moments here for the House. And it comes all the way down to the House Judiciary Committee. My colleague, Tyler ONeal, went before the House Judiciary and argued over, again, things that Americans really don't like. In this case, dark money infiltrating through nonprofit groups into all kinds of ad campaigns that then the federal government uses to target those same Americans. And individuals like David French can try to make the argument that Americans are actually deeply excited, very, 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 very in favor of all of these particular groups, which is why they're not out in the streets for them. Anywho, I think he's on the line. Let's head over and catch Tyler ONeal. It's really something to watch these left-leaning, left-wing money groups get exposed because of the data in Congress. The sources that the Biden administration cited were laid bare because of the SPLC investigations by my colleague, Tyler ONeal. So when you're getting asked these questions by Jim Jordan, you're going through all of this stuff. It's kind of like all of your life's work, as far as the Southern Poverty Law Center is concerned, brought up before the most hostile of enemies, not, Jim Jordan necessarily, but some of the House Democrats rely on the SPLC's hate map to make their points. What was that like?
Yeah, it was phenomenal. I mean, when Jim Jordan asked me about the SPLC, like he opens his whole, he has 5 minutes to ask me questions. First thing he says is, Mr. ONeal, what is the SPLC? And that's like, serving up. I've spent years covering this topic, and now I finally get a chance to say it in front of Congress. And sure,
well, then wait a minute. Hang on a
Crockett
second.
right
Let's
there.
give the crowd what they want. Here you go. Here's what that looked like.
Mr. ONeal, who is the Southern Poverty Law Center?
Southern Poverty Law Center is a far-left radical activist group that routinely smears conservative and Christian organizations.
Does the Southern Poverty Law Center partner with the Open Society Foundation?
Yes, the Southern Poverty Law Center received $75,000 from foundation to promote Open Society.
And the Open Society Foundation gets money from the American taxpayers, is that right?
There was an arm of the Open Society Foundation that is now closed that received a large number. Yes.
It did get. Okay. And as you pointed out, the Southern Poverty Law Center labels a lot of conservative groups as hate groups.
Yes,
right?
Including Focus on the Family this year.
Focus on the Family, Alliance Defending Freedom, Family Research Council,
Turning Point
Center
USA.
for Immigration Studies, Moms for Liberty. Moms are now a hate group?
Yes, they put Moms for Liberty on there. They actually said that they compared them to the Uptown Klan of the 1950s.
And you know what's interesting?
Nicely done. Again, nice, succinct, to the point. And then he starts listing all of the various groups that are on this hate map. And I got to tell you, I knew the Focus on the Family thing because we've talked about that before quite a bit. But he starts going into all of these various groups that the Southern Poverty Law Center is comparing to neo-Nazis, overt, open, loud, and proud neo-Nazi groups. He starts talking about Moms for Liberty, the Alliance Defending Freedom. I mean, good Lord, what a look.
Yeah, I mean, they have Turning Point USA, the largest conservative grassroots youth organization in the country, on this map that they say it's the infrastructure upholding white supremacy. And their history is suing the Klan into bankruptcy. I mean, you could not get clearer that they're trying to compare the mainstream right, the conservatives, moms and dads who care about their kids' education, to the Klan. That's what they do. That's how they get their money and how they demonize those who disagree with them.
You say, well, what does it matter? It's just some left-wing group that, that's out here. Maybe, I know you said that they're no longer partnering with an organization, or they are partnered with an organization no longer receiving federal tax dollars. But there is a way that the FBI under the Biden administration has used the SPLC before. I mean, when the Progressive Advocacy Group is being used as the definitive proof for why the FBI has the right to go after American parents concerned for what their kids are exposed to or what they're not exposed to. I mean, there's, having a little bit of water in the gas tank. This is full-blown engine failure.
Oh, and I mean, it gets far worse. I mean, the FBI cited the SPLC in that memo, but the DOJ was meeting with the SPLC throughout Biden's administration. And it's like, you see 18 White House meetings, you see them meeting with Department of Education officials. And then, of course, you have them working with some of the infrastructure that's upholding the left's massive campaign. So you see money coming from George Soros's Open Society Foundation, money coming from the Tides Foundation. And, in Charlottesville, when Charlottesville happened, the SPLC raked in millions from George and Amal Clooney, from JP Morgan Chase, from Apple. Amazon was citing their hate map. CNN was plastering it on their website. I mean, this organization still has a far unearned amount of clout. And this, they continue to get this attention despite the fact that they had a racial discrimination and sexual harassment scandal in 2019. Their hate map inspired a terrorist attack in 2012, and they just got accused of union busting last year. And they have Cayman Island accounts. I mean, it's just like, if you have a scandal, let's say we're playing bingo, scandal, left-wing NGO bingo, and the SPLC has won like 5 times till Sunday.
They're like kicking her out of the Catholic bingo hall because it's like, you've won every single night. You got to give somebody else a chance. You're taking too much left-wing money. Now that brings us to Alex Soros, the heir to the great prosecutor kingmaker George Soros himself.
Oh my, yeah.
Alex Soros, you brought up at the very end. And Jamie Raskin of Maryland, well, not enough talcum powder in the drawers. He got a little hot and bothered over this. Check it out.
Finger pointing is for losers. For this committee, no to finger pointing, yes to problem solving. But this entire hearing is nothing but absurd political finger pointing. And it's not even finger pointing at people who actually run our government or occupy public office. It's finger pointing at not-for-profit groups like Church World Service or HIAS, Lutheran Community Services, and the reviled philanthropist George Soros, who has given away hundreds of millions of dollars to make the world a better place.
So, Raskin goes after you. I mean, what do you do in that kind of a situation when somebody wants to play ball?
Well, I think I got under his Raskin.
No. All right, I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
That Democrat, like, I sat through, and you do this when you testify. You sit through the opening statements of the majority, in this case, the Republicans, where I'm like, oh yeah, they're making our points. And then the Democrats, and we had 2 rounds of opening statements from the chairman and the ranking members. So you had 2 ranking members, Jasmine Crockett and Jamie Raskin. I had to sit there with a grin on my face as he was going through saying, oh, this is a hearing for losers. And then he said, the thing that stuck in my craw was when he said that we have this hearing all about somebody, and he was talking about George Soros, who doesn't have any power. And I'm like, all right, I gotta find some way to respond to this. And I was sitting there through the hearing, and Jim Jordan comes out with all the SPLC questions. And I'm like, all right, let's go. And then he has like a minute and a half left. He gets to the end of his point, and I'm like, by the way, Mr. Raskin, you said this, but the truth is, Alex Soros said he won't run for office because he has more power now than he ever would if he won an election. And you could see that this bothered Jamie Raskin because he had to get in there at the end, that little point of clarification.
And here he goes.
On the point from ranking member Raskin, he noted that George Soros does not have power. Alex Soros was asked if he would run for office, and he said that he would not because he believes that as head of the Open Society Foundations, he has more power than he ever would if he had any office in the land.
Well, based on what we just described, it sure looks like they got a lot of influence. And all we're saying is maybe we shouldn't send American tax dollars to these organizations that are undermining American taxpayers. Wow. And somehow we're not supposed to have this hearing. I yield back.
Will the gentleman yield just quickly? All I want to say, I didn't say he didn't have power. I said he did not have official governmental power.
Again, stellar stuff. You cannot ask for better than the great Tyler ONeal over from the Daily Signal. You can find his stuff over on X, of course, at dailysignal.com. It's just great. Again, I've got so many amazing colleagues who are doing the great work every single day. So go check out those links. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We're going to pick up the radio crew from the commercial break.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We are so out of order in the show notes at this point, but that's totally fine. Let me tell you why. Because the era of legacy media in general is just over. I mean, it is tipped over, fallen over. It is all kinds of done. And there's a good reason why it's completely done. Every day the Democrats wake up. Every day the left wakes up in their media seats and they refuse to learn their lessons. That's really it. If you have particular political views, right now there are those on the left and some on the right that get out there and they make really dumb predictions. And then after those dumb predictions are proven wrong, and I don't mean like they kind of missed the mark, but they were close. I mean, they were told to throw the knife north and then they threw it south. We're talking 180-degree miss over here. They don't learn. They decide instead that they are going to double, triple, quadruple down. And this kind of media nonsense, here, let me break it down in this way. So you guys remember Joy Reid, right? Joy Reid was on MSNBC, and every night she was making these predictions, and whoa, how could Kamala lose? Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. Gee, oh my gosh. Well, Joy Reid is still out there, though she's no longer on network TV, and she's still saying the same kind of really disgusting, gross, horrible, inhumane nonsense that she always has. Here you go.
Trump has those kind of voters. They are dedicated to him personally. They care more about him being happy than them being happy. They care more about him having what he wants than them having what they want. They will give up their health care. They will let their daughters be destroyed. They will let their families be destroyed. They will do. There's nothing he can do. He can drown them in Texas. He can take away their FEMA. He can do anything he wants to them. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a cult.
I mean, my God. First of all, there are no allegations that have stuck whatsoever that FEMA has not done everything under the leadership power to effectuate aid for Texas civilians. And according to individuals inside of FEMA, things are a lot better in rollout, in preparation, in immediate management, and working with local and state governments, according to both Republican and Democrat officials, than was seen in the Biden administration. Now, suggesting that Donald Trump rose the waters and killed the girls at Camp Mystic in the Texas flood is abominable. It is one of the most disgusting, trashy things that individuals could mention. So, of course, it's coming, free flowing out of Joy Reid's mouth. Now, MSNBC got rid of Joy Reid. So, like, Tony, why are you talking about her? What's the point? Because on the major left-leaning networks like CNN, like MSNBC, the people they have replaced those goofballs with, like the people they've replaced, for example, a lot of the old Brian Stelter primetime crew with, the Abby Phillips panel crew, was supposed to be a more moderate front. That you had Abby as the independent moderator, then you had Scott Jennings from the right, then you had other panelists from the left, and they kind of came in and they had some discussions, and and Scott did a lot of suplexing of his opponents, and so there you go, things were fine. Well, the problem is Abby has essentially started acting just like Joy Reid. So, are media actually learning any lessons? Well, here's the double standard on states doing redistricting for elections. See if you can catch Abby, the host, who's supposed to be the moderate, nonpartisan facilitator, not being so much.
So what does it signify that Republicans ahead of the midterms believe that it's going to be so necessary to get an upper hand that they have to actually redraw an entire state's congressional maps in order?
Reminder that the Wisconsin Supreme Court election was about redistricting congressional seats. Abby Phillips said nothing. Now, if you're asking non-biased questions, what is the bias of this individual? She has assumed the question, or begging the question in this particular ideological fallacy, a couple of times here already. Why do Republicans believe? She is now assuming that Republicans believe this. She says that they have to redraw the map before the election. So she's applying intent. She's implying the crime. She's implying the rationale behind the intent. And she's already the judge, jury, and execution by implying a moral negativity to redistricting conversations, which have a lot more to do with where populations move. As much as both sides like to scream gerrymandering, which is probably my least favorite Seinfeld character.
To get 5 whole seats out of it?
Oh, probably the same thing that it signifies when they did it in Illinois and got a 14-3 delegation for D's. Maryland 7-1, Massachusetts 9-0. We know what happened here in New York, California. Even though they have a commission, we all know what goes on there.
In a mid-cycle specifically, are all of those cases in mid-cycles?
All of these cases are where Democrats use the power they have to give them an advantage.
But just to be clear, because I didn't do the research that you did.
Oh, now that's a thing to admit on the air. I've got a little bit of a hot take here. I make mistakes. Well, I'm sorry. We're going to save that for the last segment of the show where I break a couple of FCC rules and some traditions for show stuff. We'll let them continue.
In the break here, is it that they're changing it after the actual census process where you're supposed to you're supposed to go through the congressional redistricting process?
Does it matter?
Yes, very much. I think that's the whole point.
So it's okay for Democrats to lopside these states 9-0 in Massachusetts?
Here's what I will say about this.
I love it. Yes, it matters, the Republican. How dare you? It's horrible, terrible. By the way, we're also now getting word, we might flip over to this in bonus tonus, but a bit of somewhat breaking news. How old is this news, Nick, about Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles?
The 2 latest Instagram posts by the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, are both about that.
about within the last half hour. So we can go ahead and suggest this is new here. Karen Bass of Los Angeles, we'll get the clip for you here in the commercial break, is now claiming that she got the National Guard to retreat from Los Angeles. Oh my goodness gracious.
Somewhat of a victory lap there.
Yes. Nothing says victory like suggesting that you ran the California National Guard out of your California city. All right. Well, putting that aside, the other CNN cruiser, again, continually losing it in other panels. So Brad Palumbo, who's a friend, and occasionally at times a guy that I disagree with quite openly. He's a libertarian guy, and we have very different opinions on, for example, I think his case is that the shall not infringed in the Second Amendment means that people who are not citizens of this country should also be able to purchase guns here. I think that should only apply to citizens. He has his ideological reasons for that. I do. We've bickered about that before as friends. Brad went on this CNN panel show where Ana Navarro proceeded to completely write off anything he had to say because he is white. And how he handles himself here, by the way, is far better than how I would handle myself at this present time. Being told, you're white, shut up.
Also, I want to respond to you saying that I was hyperbolic when I talked about a reign of terror.
Because that is hyperbolic.
No, it might be hyperbolic for you as a white man.
Oh, okay.
It's certainly not hyperbolic for me as a Latino. No,
it might be hyperbolic for you as a white man, but it is not hyperbolic for me as a Latino. By the way, if you are a female, you are Latina. If you are going to speak Spanish, do it properly. Or, as they say in Spanish, properamente.
I'm not being racist.
To dismiss my opinion for being a white man.
No, I'm not dismissing your opinion. I am telling you that the Latino community, the brown community in America.
Speak in one voice.
Okay, well, let me speak with my voice. I mean, you said I was being hyperbolic. Let me respond.
Racially, sure.
I'm not. You being a white man as an insult.
When you invoke it to dismiss my
being a white man as an insult.
When you invoke it.
Do you think Latinos are living under circumstances that other people may not be right now?
Then you hear Abby Phillips come in, interject. Oh, we got to stop this right now. Oh, we got to hang on here now. This is getting out of hand. The open racism. We can't allow Brad to slam dunk on her in the most humiliating fashion possible. Quick, somebody cut the mic.
We're about to have a whole conversation about that very thing. But I just want to make a point that, Brad, all she's saying is that her view of the situation is different from yours. I don't think that's an insult.
She basically said, I'm wrong because I'm a white man.
She just said, I see it differently. She said, I see it differently from you, which is not an insult. It's not.
Oh, okay, yeah. So again, as long as various hosts on nonpartisan programs continue to play goalie for the other side on particular issues, it will continue to get worse. Now, I do want to mention this because we're going to have to break over for commercial break for the radio crew here. Again, FCC rules, sorry. Connell McShane over on News Nation does try his best when I'm on particular panels arguing with a guy over on the left side of the aisle. He does try to play goalie in a way that I believe is pretty fair. In which case he does some of his own research. I know, what a crazy concept before you go on the air. So we'll let the radio crew skip away to commercial land, and we'll continue over on the live stream because this stuff's got real consequences. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, producer Nick, you look like you were chomping at the bit to say something. Is there some kind of update you wish to provide us with?
No, earlier I was just going to say there is a distinct possibility she could just be making an announcement with her grammar mistake there that really she's coming out of the closet.
Oh, good for her. I'm excited. Oh, by the way, we do have that Karen Bass clip ready to go now. We've got it ready. Here you go. Karen Bass declaring victory for Los Angeles over American troops.
Hello, Los Angeles. We had a major victory today.
The city didn't burn down. Oh, sorry.
After standing strong, Angelenos were united.
Angelenos.
The peaceful protests.
Bricks thrown at officers' heads, cars burnt to the ground, murders, assaults, peaceful.
The just egregious situation that has been going on in the city, we've been notified that 2,000 troops are leaving. They are retreating. We stood strong. We peacefully protested.
Hang on a second here. Hang on, I actually have the Joy Reid clip where I was promised wishing upon a shooting star that the National Guard was going to stay forever and establish a military state. I think we actually have that clip ready to go here right now, don't we? Do we have this here? Yes, we do.
Happen. So I'm nervous. I think we're coming to a point where Trump could declare a national emergency. We don't know if we're going to have free and fair elections anymore. I think poor people are going to suffer horribly. I think rural people are going to suffer horribly.
I was promised that Trump was going to use calling in the National Guard to institute martial law. And he just pulled them out after the riots ended. My God, the horror. You mean he did exactly what he said he was going to do?
We demanded that the troops were not needed here, and we won.
You did not, by the way. You sued the President of the United States to wrest National Guard control from the chief executive, the commander-in-chief. And then the court said no. And so then when the commander-in-chief decided that he was done with the National Guard in Los Angeles, he pulled the National Guard. He didn't cause it. Karen Bass did not cause anyone to do anything except roll their eyes and vomit uncontrollably from both orifices. So by all means, please, again, you see the same thing over on the congressional side where they just tell themselves all of these wonderful nonsensities, and individuals like Mike Howell over from the Oversight Project comes in with a wrecking ball and reminds people, no, you're wrong.
Again, you talked about the importance of oversight, Mr. Howell. Do you believe that members of Congress are legally allowed to conduct oversight of ICE detention facilities?
As we've written extensively, the Oversight Project, because we're trying to help keep your colleagues out of jail, like Representative McIver, who was indicted. I misspoke when I said she was arrested. You as an individual member do not have oversight authority. Oversight authority by the rules of the House flows through the full House to the chairman, and that right now is held by the majority. So
it is
despite the
legally
statute
allowed.
that you cite,
Mr.
it's going to end up with more Democrats clogging our jails.
There you go. Again, Mike Howell, who does his homework, and I've done investigatory research with Howell before. He's a very, very dedicated guy. Incredible to watch this play out in real time. I believe we're getting ready to come up on that radio timer, so we're going to scoot away for some commercial break. Be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Closing time. All right. It is time to break a little bit of the FCC rules here, or at least some of the procedures. So if I end up with a fine on the other side of this particular thing, all I can say is that I'm glad that FCC Chairman Brendan Carr watches the show. So as we're being fined, at least we can all have a good laugh about it. So normally, it is not considered a very good idea to tell individuals exactly how the show gets made, exactly where things for the show come from, and where it is that we get the particular clips that we show on the air. But I've been asked about this a lot over the last couple of months, and while a lot of other media outlets out there, including those on the right, refuse to share anything about their news breaking process, about how they actually go through their editing, about how they communicate things to their audiences, I am going to go ahead and throw a little caution to the wind here and tell you, again, my producers have no idea that I'm about to do this. I'm going to share with you exactly how we at the Tony Kinnett Cast for the Daily Signal go about the entire show. Because with so many of our friends and competitors on the left and the right, who are currently trying to gatekeep the media process from everyone. Like somehow that being a broadcaster means that you're better than anyone else because you are gracing the airwaves of radio or TV or the internet. No, I'm not here for it. I'm going to tell you exactly how we do things. I received a question a couple of days ago from a particular journalist for the Los Angeles Times, asking me explicitly where I get some of the footage for the show, and if I had the rights to use Los Angeles Times footage on the show. So, according to a lot of these different outlets, they believe that you have to go through some type of intense purchasing and licensing process in order to push things out to the American people. That is not true. That is not under FCC regulations. That is not something I'm required to do. If you, the LA Times, you post something on X, you post something on the internet, and I have access to that via a subscription service, for example. For the Daily Signal, we have subscriptions to certain outlets so that we can keep up on all of the drivel that's being pushed out at the Los Angeles Times. that when you push that, I absolutely have the right to show that on the air as long as I fulfill one rule and one rule alone. I provide commentary about it. That's it. The only rule for me to use your footage as a journalistic outlet is that I have to provide commentary. That's it. You'll notice via the lack of certain YouTube strikes and Rumble complaints and Twitter X rules violations that we do in fact follow certain procedures and policies. Now, regarding the use of inappropriate language on FCC regulated airwaves, you are not allowed to use a slate of certain bad no-no words on FCC federally regulated public affiliate airwaves, with a few exceptions. If a senior official in the United States government or something considered news specific, as in for example, when Trump dropped the F-bomb, you would technically be allowed to play Trump saying the F word in an official comment to media over air uncensored. Now, that's a little uncouth, and perhaps you might want to mute that anyway, but the idea that there are some special super duper rules that individuals in the administration or in Congress are breaking by saying a bad word over C-SPAN is simply not true. Last but not leastly, how does the show get written? Who is the editorial process? Who makes the decisions for what goes on the air? Me. And I assign certain tasks to producer Nick, who's here in studio, producer Elmore, who's in the Carolinas, producer Daniel, and producer Lou, who is in Pennsylvania. Allison, who I interact with occasionally on the air, she is with WIBC in Indianapolis. That is who we syndicate out of first. Now, are there any outlets out there in the wild beyond that push information to me? Do I receive instructions, for example, from members of Congress or from the administration or from private groups that say, this is what you're going to talk about tonight? Nope. And that is to the great heartburn at times of the editor-in-chief whom I work under, Kate Trinko over at the Daily Signal. She's my editor-in-chief. The president of the Daily Signal is Rob Bluey. And they, for better or worse, have given me a lot of freedom to put together certain things on the show. Now, this means I do not always agree with my colleagues. For example, Bradley Devlin, our political editor, is a little bit different in his idea of what conservatism is than I am. And my idea of conservatism is a little bit different than some of our other editors and writers and reporters, and that's perfectly fine. There is no omission of what Victor Davis Hanson or Bradley Devlin or Tyler ONeal or Virginia Allen or any other way, shape, or form that happens on this show. None. I write the show every day in a Google document with my producers, and we simply put whatever it is on the air. And yes, a lot of times the show contains a lot of things that I find particularly relevant. I am not, and again, I do not make enough money to be peddling influence around for various interest groups to silence individuals here and there and preach particular narratives that may work against some parental rights groups, for example, or maybe others not, and push legislation here and not there. No. Now, as for FCC regulation stuff that we can kind of get into that's maybe a little bit more on the sketchy side of regulation, for this show's syndication route, do I have a major, impressive, phenomenal syndication contract that limits what can and cannot be said on the show? Nope. We have handshake agreements with various radio and television stations around the country to abide by certain rules in order to rebroadcast the show. And I say this because there have been recent allegations, not by anyone super special or important, just enough that I feel that, it might be fun to kind of dig into these on the air so that I can point to these in a couple of months when these allegations, I'm sure, are made again. The only individual that decides what is and is not talked about on the show is me, with the exception of one case in the last couple of months in which there is a certain word that I was asked very nicely not to say on the air on certain radio stations. And because I value my relationship with said radio stations over my personal opinions and desires, I have elected not to say a word that has come into fashion quite frequently in the recent months that I have no personal moral qualms with saying as kind of an insult. So, those things all said and aside, it's not exactly the most couthy of things. It's rather uncouth to go into the details and the nitty and the gritty of how certain things on the show work. But above and beyond all, I value transparency on this show with our audience. Is it so that I can feel some amazing moral feeling when I go to bed thinking that I'm amazing. He's the next Rush Limbaugh or Bill O'Reilly. Oh, wow, look at Tony Kennedy, so great. Nope. It's because I don't have the mental energy or stamina to keep track of things that I am doing that have to be artificial. God forbid there is a day when I have to have everything that I am doing written out well in advance. And by the way, as for this particular show, and if there is a script that I am following, just to make this perfectly clear, I believe that, well, maybe it won't work quite like that. I'll open the camera app just for kicks and giggles. I know this is very, very unorthodox. As for my teleprompter, what is shown on the screen right now is simply my face and then the interface we use to put out the program. That's it. There's also a little monitor over to the side, which I use to keep track of some of the comments from the wonderful people over in the YouTube and the X live streams. And then on the laptop in front of me is simply my outline, where it says, hey, here are things that you should talk about. And then I have a channel open where individuals like Allison over on the WIBC keep me in tune on the radio clock so I don't violate rules. Speaking of which, it's almost 7:57 and 20 seconds Eastern time, which means show's about over. So Allison now brings up the closing music as kind of a fade out bumper. And then I say, we're going to continue over on the live stream. And then we cut away from that live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. I give the closer. I wait for the little line on the screen to show that Allison is now playing commercial audio for the end. Little Rock, Arkansas also disconnects unless they're carrying us over extra. And then after this, we get to a period of time called bonus tonus. This is simply time that is after the radio show. Now, again, why do I go on kind of a little rant like that? Is that really necessary? No. Why? I've gotten a lot of questions from individuals that I think are pretty good-natured through all of the Epstein things that have suggested that I am taking money from someone or that we are peddling certain talking points via certain individuals as though, oh, goodness, we have to peddle money to the 30-year-old Irish Cherokee Baptist out of Greenfield, Indiana, for his show that broadcasts on a couple of radio stations and TV channels. Oh yeah, quick, somebody write the checks right now. Or my producer, who's usually looking up ways to edit videos that are questionable to give to our audience over on the offhand. So that stuff aside, hopefully that answers some questions. There is a little bit in there, although I won't explicitly say that we're not really supposed to share via the FCC side of things. Like not having syndication contracts that are explicit, for example. But if that's the case, so be it. Again, transparency is important to me for the offset because it matters. On to just a smidge of bonus tonus this evening. So there have been some really good policies that have come out and some really bad policies that have come out from Republicans that I feel is necessary to talk with you guys about before we say sayonara for the evening. Oh, also, just as a fact check on myself, the Spanish word for properly is not properamente. It's adecuadamente, but most often the correctamente is used instead of properly, correctly. Yes, amente is usually just how you add an ly in Spanish. That's just a little fun fact check on myself. Now, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, before he's fining our show for talking about certain specifics that we don't have exactly set straight, he's genuinely delivering some really huge historic permitting wins across the entire federal government. So today, the President of the United States and his cabinet announced that the FCC will soon propose to eliminate the NEPA review processes. So the NEPA review processes are a series of National Environmental Policy Act guidelines that require you, before you begin any kind of a building project, to make sure that the Saskatchewanese lesbian mosquito doesn't nest there on October the 1st. Those kind of environmental policies. And EPA procedures that Lee Zeldin can't just pull away because they're congressional laws. Now, through the Federal Communication Commission crew, they are going to officially propose the complete elimination of all of these silly, nonsensical environmental regulations that keep United States infrastructure from being upgraded. Do you want to know one of the main reasons why the interstates don't get any better? Or why they're not building more freight train lines? Now, in Indiana, our legislature despises trains because, a lot of Republicans in the 90s were really stupid, but that's neither here nor there. As far as the rest of the country is concerned, a lot of infrastructure, like upgrading internet through private means, power keeping a certain number of transformers on hand, building new substations. Often those things don't occur because there's a ton of environmental regulations. So Chairman Brendan Carr has announced a notice of proposed rulemaking, which, if adopted, would examine the Commission's environmental regulations to ensure that the NEPA no longer keeps the Federal Communications Commission, the Department of Energy, and other major transportation and infrastructure networks across the country from upgrading infrastructure. It is a massive win. That is a massive win for the economy and for people in the United States. That's huge. That's very, very excellent. Unfortunately, there's a little bit of bad that goes to things as well. The bad is on the immigration issue. Some Republicans are getting a little bit nervous that media coverage of Trump immigration issues are not as high and phenomenal, maybe we should say, in the approval rating side as they were a couple of months ago. So here's Harry Enton talking about this today.
In a word, Kate, oof. What are we talking about here? Take a look at this. Trump's net approval rating on immigration. Got 5 numbers for you across the screen here. A lot of focus on Gallup at -27. That's horrible. Quinnipiac University, -16. That's awful. Marist is bad at -9. Ipsos is -8. Fox at -7.
So a lot of Republicans on the more moderate sides of the aisle have decided that this means we need new legislation and we need to change tactics immediately. Again, as Harry Enton pointed out, those are spot polls. They are not a bridge over time polling situation. So those numbers could be completely different a couple of weeks from now. And they are very likely to be, given the current situation. Some of those polls, by the way, like the Ipsos that he was citing, is a little outdated, and the questions are a little bit suspicious. Enton points that out later in the interview. We just don't have time to air all of it. A certain representative from Colorado, whom I like on a lot of things, his name is Representative Gabe Evans. He's a Republican. He's a Christian husband, father. He's an Army combat veteran, retired police lieutenant. He is a pretty great guy. He put forward a horrible immigration bill. And so, in interest of fairness and making sure that we don't start to lose our skis and put forward bad policy, thinking that's going to turn the country around, here's the bill proposed by Representative Gabe Evans.
Hi, I'm Congressman Gabe Evans from Colorado's 8th Congressional District, and today I am so happy to be able to help introduce the Bipartisan Dignity Act. I'm the grandson of immigrants from Mexico, and so this bill is particularly important to me because it does 3 critical things. It makes sure that we have resources to secure the border. It helps us crush the criminals, the cartels, and the gangbangers that are in our community illegally and causing problems, but it also provides a pathway for hardworking immigrants who want to come to the United States, work hard, raise their family, be a contributing part of the American dream. And this is something that I've heard from the employers and from the Latino community.
Oh, you've heard from the employers that they want their cheap labor to stay? No.
Community in my district. They want that path forward to be able to comply with the law and earn their version of the American dream. That's what the Dignity Act does, and I'm so honored to be able to help introduce it today.
Okay, so this is essentially a semantics game for a kind of amnesty. So the Dignity Act essentially gives a special route for those who are working in the United States to gain official resident status, which is like it's not a visa. It's a second-class citizen kind of situation, which is a horrible, 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 horrible idea. And as for, well, the Latino or Hispanic individuals in my district have said they're very excited about this. Again, by the polling data, Hispanic legal immigrants in this country are not a fan of amnesty proposals. They're not, because they went through the process, or their parents, or their grandparents went through the process of immigrating legally to this country. And if you don't go through the legal processes and instead you skip in line, it turns out you are not very popular among those who did go through that arduous process. Now, here's the real issue with this, though. We should not be creating separate classes of individuals in this country. That is a bad idea, and we've done it before. Right now, what Gabe Evans is proposing, again, as nice a guy as he is, what he is proposing, this Dignity Act, again, when they say the bipartisan dignity, the bipartisan should immediately be a red flag, because again, when you have people like Chris Coons and Hakeem Jeffries calling Republicans Satan, making Jesus weep, all of a sudden there's a lot of support. What's going on here? This particular Dignity Act, creating a second-class situation for individuals to continue working at their exceptionally low wages, but live in the United States, not paying all of the taxes that you and I pay, but receiving most of the benefits that you and I are eligible for as citizens of this country. That's a problem, because we have seen this before. And we have seen a second-class citizen called residents before in the early part of the United States, funnily enough, so that individuals could be used as cheap labor so that they didn't have to pay full wages, rights, and benefits to the individuals. It was called slavery. Yes, it was called slavery. There were groups of Democrats who argued all the way up to the Civil War and after that black people in this country, if they were not slaves, should just be considered legal residents because they were not citizens of the United States. This is where, by the way, where they got the proposal for the 3/5 compromise. So they wouldn't be counted 5/5 of a person, a total citizen. They would just be this 3/5 kind of pseudo resident. And even so, for example, during the era of high piracy, in the last of the Caribbean piracy that existed, and then during the Barbary States piracy, official U.S. policy was that if a black person was captured, the United States government would not say, hey, that's a citizen of the United States, give them back. They would say that is a resident legally and property of this citizen. Or if they were a freed slave, then they would just be a legal resident of the United States. Again, not a visa, a legal termed resident. We should not have multiple classes of citizenship in this country. Either you are a sovereign citizen with all of the rights thereof, again, barring the fact that you may have committed a felony and sacrificed some of those particular rights, or you are not a citizen and may have the opportunity to become one. We don't need residence. We don't need a caste system. The more systems there are and levels, that gives people opportunities to exploit it. And yeah, I bet the employers who are paying 50 cents an hour for the recent illegal immigrant to pick tomatoes in the lowlands, if they grow tomatoes in Colorado, or work in construction companies so they can pay them $1 an hour to help build shanties that they're passing off as new builds in suburbs. Yeah, I bet they're calling to make sure they don't have to pay an American citizen or a legal immigrant or a visa resident holder the proper wages they have to report to the federal government. And also, again, depending on the number of hours, insurance and contribution to 401k and the other things that come alongside it. It is bad policy. Now, how is the left taking this? Well, one individual wrote in response to me, because I wrote, so you're interested in trying to revive the slave pseudo-resident classification. What, are we going to count them as 3/5 a person? What's wrong with you? That's an appropriate response. An individual over on the left responded, frankly, being 3/5 a person is better than being a non-person in a concentration camp. Oh my. Oh my. So if you're wondering what the left's message into the midterms is going to be, in case you're wondering if the Republicans are going to have a really rough time heading into the midterms, which there's a lot of fear mongering going on right now about, oh, the Epstein files are going to sink the Trump administration. No one's going to come out in the midterms. It's terrible. The left's current message into the midterms, because again, it's not enough for a Republican candidate to need to be elected. The Democrats also have to bring people out to vote for them. Those aren't set in stone things. You have to get people out to vote for candidates. If the Democrats' message is, hey, being a second-class citizen working slave labor wages is better than being put into a federal facility for 2 weeks and then being deported for crimes they chose to commit. Yeah, good luck with that in the midterms. And by the way, Harry Enton did make a very good point. This will be the last point that we'll make for the evening on how the Democrats are doing heading into the midterms that a lot of people aren't heeding right now, but doesn't make it any less true.
The bottom line is this. Democrats are behind their 2006 and 2018 paces when it comes to the generic congressional ballot. What are we talking about here? All right, the Democrats versus the Republicans on the generic congressional ballot, the margins. Look at where we are now. Democrats are ahead, but by just 2 points. Look at where Democrats were already ahead by in 2017. They were behind by 7 points. How about 2005 on the generic congressional ballot? Ahead by 7 points, and now they're only ahead by 2 points. Their lead is less than half less than half of where it was in either 2017 or 2005 in July of those years, the year before the midterm election. Yes, Donald Trump may be unpopular, but Democrats have not come anywhere close to sealing the deal at this particular point.
That's a major problem. It's a major problem. We saw this, by the way, remember in 2024. Biden was told, hey, you are not polling well. And the idea is, well, we'll just get everyone to come out. We'll build the coalition. Sure. Does the Trump administration have some things that voters may not be particularly fond of in their congressional candidates? Absolutely. But the candidate campaigns have not yet started. And if the Democrats are going to move forward in this particular campaign, and in the process, they're going to attempt these really bizarre messages about concentration camps that don't exist. And, oh man, Trump's going to kill us all and institute martial law. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you by all means. You run those particular statements on video. We'll use them here on this show as commercial advertisements to the American people of exactly what you're selling. With that said, hope you have a wonderful evening. We'll be back here tomorrow. Same great time, same great place. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.